With the increase in the popularity of browsing on mobile phones and tablets, it has become essential to create websites that are optimized for these devices. Previously, you had to create different versions of a website and use script to redirect the visitor to the mobile version of the page. WYSIWYG Web Builder version 10 and 11 introduces responsive web design, which allows you to create a single HTML page containing different variants of the layout, each optimized for a specific device width. Your website will dynamically respond to the screen size of the visitor and display the layout most appropriate to their device. These different variants are called breakpoint and uses CSS3 media queries. A breakpoint is a separate view on a page in WYSIWYG Web Builder. A page can have multiple breakpoints, each one optimized for a specific screen width. Common breakpoints are 320 pixels, which is mobile portrait, 480 pixels, which is mobile landscape, 768 pixels for tablet, 1024 for tablet and notebook, and 1280 pixels or something greater than that, which is for desktop. Of course, you can define your own weight and have as many breakpoints as you like. Though in WYSIWYG Web Builder, you can have a maximum of 25 breakpoints. Although, usually you would have no more than 3 breakpoints in your project. Now let's take a look at how to create our breakpoint. To create your breakpoint, simply come to Page under Menu and navigate to Responsive Web Design. Click on Manage Breakpoint. Under Manage Breakpoint, click on Add. Under Max Width, click on the drop-down arrow to select the breakpoint you want to use. In my case, I'm going to use 320, 480, and 768 pixels. I'll first click on 320 pixels, hit on OK. Then I come back, click on Add, click on the drop-down arrow and select 480. In case you don't have 480 pixels listed here, what you can do is easily clear what is here and enter your 480 pixels. Go ahead and click on OK. And let's wait for the last one, that is 768 pixels. Hit on OK. Your breakpoints are then created. To navigate to a breakpoint, simply click on the breakpoint marker here or use the specific breakpoint you want to switch to, either 320, 480 or 768 pixels. Now that our breakpoints are ready, now let's switch to them and start making our website responsive. We will first start with the 768 pixels. I'll easily come here and click on the breakpoint marker and it switches to 768 pixels. This is how it looks. It's still bearing the layout of the desktop. Now we are going to go ahead and make this responsive by resizing and repositioning objects here. Let's go ahead and change the size of our carousel. Click on your carousel, come to your property inspector, and let's change the size to 460 pixels by 500. Hit on Enter. Let's go ahead and resize this layer. Let's move this text a little bit up and move this button a little bit up as well. Now click on the layer and resize it to 300 by 300 pixels. Hit on Enter. And now let's reposition our text as well as our button here. Now let's move it a little bit left and move our carousel left as well. Let's maintain our spacing between the layer and the carousel. Let's go ahead and resize this layer. We'll change this to 300 pixels by 315. Hit on Enter. And let's reposition it here. Let's move it 3 pixels away from the layer above it. Now let's go ahead and reposition this text and go ahead and resize this layer. We will change this to 460 by 50 pixels. Hit on Enter and move it a little bit away from the layer. Move it 3 pixels away from the carousel. Let's resize this to 228 pixels by 225. Hit on Enter. Go ahead and resize this to the same size. In my case, I'll copy this, click on this, come back to the property inspector and paste this here. Hit on Enter and move it away from this particular layer. I'll make sure it aligns to this at the right hand side by the help of the guide. I'll go ahead and move this a little bit left. I'll click and hold on the Shift key, click on this, move them 3 pixels away from the top layer. I'll go ahead and resize this to 300 by 150 pixels. It's already 150 pixels height. I'll move it up to this level, move it a little bit down. Looks like we have a wide spacing between these layers. I'll go ahead and resize this image. Let's go and make it 300 by 326 pixels. Now, to maintain an equal spacing between them, let's click on this layer, holding on Shift, click on this layer as well, and click on this layer. Now release your hand off the Shift key, come to Arrange and click on Vertically Distributed. This should give you equal spacing between these particular layers. Now it looks like our tablet version of our website is beginning to take shape. Let's go ahead and position this in the center. Position this in the center as well. And let's bring this a little bit down. Let's move this a little bit down as well. And align it left to the text. Our 768 pixels or the tablet version is almost ready. Now let's switch to our 480 pixels and resize the object and reposition them as well. I will first resize the carousel to 475 by 299 pixels. Hit on Enter. I'll go ahead and resize this layer. I'll move the text a little bit above and move the button above as well. I'll resize this to 477 pixels by 174 pixels. Go ahead and hit on Enter. Now it's time to expand this text to be able to give some spacing for the button here. I'll go ahead and expand this text and reposition my button. Bring it a little bit below the text, maintaining it at this position. I'll move my carousel down and move my layer to the top. I'll make sure it hits the edge of the rulers, both left and at the top. I'll go ahead and move my carousel to hit the bottom edge of this layer and move it 3 pixels away from it using the down arrow key. I'll reposition this particular text and resize it. I'll go ahead and change the size of this layer to 477 pixels by 50. I'll hit on Enter and move it to hit the bottom of this carousel and move it 3 pixels away from the carousel using the down arrow key. I'll go ahead and position this text in the center of this layer. I'll go ahead and reposition this image or layer. In this case, it's going to be 235 by 246 pixels. I'll hit on Enter. I'll use the same size for this layer as well. Paste it here, hit on Enter, and move it to the edge of this layer, as well as move this one as well. I'll then move it to the left hand side a little bit, holding on the Shift key, click on this, and move it 3 pixels down. I'll go ahead and resize this one as well, making it 477 pixels by 150. Hit on Enter and move it 3 pixels away from the layers above it. I'll expand this text and position it in the center of the layer. This looks good. Now where do we position this image? In my case, I wouldn't want to position this image anywhere. So what I would want to do is to hide this image so that when we switch to this particular breakpoint, the image hides. To do that, I'll simply bring my image here, and to hide it, I'll come to my Object Manager. If you don't have your Object Manager showing, come to View and under Show or Hide, select your Object Manager or simply check it and it's going to show at your left hand side of your window. Mine is showing here, and when I expand my Object Manager, it shows me the layer I just clicked on. I'll simply uncheck Visible and it hides. So when I switch to this particular breakpoint, I'm not going to view or see that particular layer I just got hidden. Now let's go ahead to 320 pixels and resize the objects and reposition them as well. I'll resize the carousel to 317 by 217 pixels. Hit on Enter and move it below here. I'll go ahead and resize this to 317 by 200 pixels. Before then, I'll move this up and move this a little bit up as well. I'll click on my layer and resize it to 317 by 200 pixels. I'll hit on Enter and move it to this position. I'll go ahead and expand this to give room for this button. I'll then go ahead and move my carousel to this position and move it 3 pixels away from the top layer. Now, This looks a little bit bigger and the text looks bigger as well. What I'll do is to resize my text and resize my layer. I'll first go ahead to resize the layer. I'll bring it down a little bit and change the size of the text. I'll make sure it fits in here. Now I'll go ahead to resize the layer to 317 by 71 pixels. Hit on enter. I'll make sure my text is still in my layer and positioned in the center. I'll go ahead and move this layer to the top and move it 3 pixels away from the carousel. I'll then resize this layer to 156 by 177 pixels. I'll hit and enter, copy this and use it for this one. Paste it and hit on enter. I'll then bring it to this position, hitting the edge of this layer. I'll bring this one to here as well. And now holding on the shift key, I'll click on this and move it 3 pixels away from the top layer. I'll go ahead and resize this image to 317 by 344 pixels. I'll hit on enter and bring it to this position. Move it 3 pixels away from the top layers. I'll then resize this to 317 by 150 pixels. I'll hit on enter and move it below here and move it 3 pixels away from the top layer. I'll make sure I position this text in the center of this layer. Now what I have to do next is to make sure all my objects are positioned in the center. To do that, I'll hit on Ctrl+A to select all the items, clicking on any of the objects, holding on it and moving it a little bit to the right hand side of my canvas. It looks like there's some space in here, so I'll go ahead and hit on the top arrow key and move it to hit the edge of the top ruler. I'll go to my 480 pixels and do same. I'll highlight on all and move them a little bit to the right hand side. I'll come to my 768 pixels and do same as well. Now my home page is almost ready. It's now time to make the rest of the pages responsive in our project.